Hello and welcome to REO Digital's Snackable Series on GA4. This is session 2 of 3. Welcome back to those of you returning from yesterday. In this one we're going to talk a little bit about, we yesterday talked about why Universal Analytics is being sunset and why GA4 is replacing it, and kind of where the key dates in that are and other important details of that. Today we're going to focus a little bit more about what you need to do to get a GA4 set up. What are the steps in that project, and where should you take some extra time to make sure it comes out not just doing the bare minimum, but really working to fill all your needs. Before we jump in, once again, I will be your host for today. My name is Finbar. I am one of REO Digital's data and analytics consultants, and I have been doing these kinds of implementations and other similar things for around about a little under 10 years in agency land. Across a wide array of different clients. Fabulous. So, getting a GA4 set up comes in a couple of discrete steps. There's a little bit of overlap between them, but we're going to break them up for the purposes of a good flow through this presentation. The first step is the easiest one, which is placing what is called the configuration tag on your site. The configuration tag is the equivalent of the page view tag for Universal Analytics, or indeed hard coding onto your site. As before, you can both use a tag management software to place GA on your site, or you can hard code it directly on, but my recommendation is always going to be to use a tag management solution like GTM, Google Tag Manager, because it makes life much easier in the long run. The configuration tag itself enables two things. First of all, when somebody loads a page, it will fire a page view. The most important basic unit of analytics tracking is the page view event. But the GA4 configuration tag also adds a thing called the engagement event. And essentially this fires when you open a tab, or when you navigate away to a different window or a different tab in your browser, and is to give GA4 the information it needs to inform, okay, there is a gap of 30 seconds between you opening the home page and moving to the next page, so they will say the time on page is 30 seconds, but the engagement event lets it cut out the time when you actually were looking at a different tab or a different window and what have you, to know, no, this was actually the amount of time they spent engaged with the page, which is a nice little addition. The advantage also of GA4 is that previously, when you place the tag on your page, you got page views, and that was it. This did enable an awful lot of reporting in Universal Analytics, but it was reasonably simple. The configuration tag now comes with what is called enhanced measurements that you can just enable in the GA4 interface. And that will give you 6 different other tracking events that you can just have. These include scroll tracking, outbound clicks, site search, form interactions, video engagement, and file downloads. However, while these are very handy and very convenient, they are also a one-size-fits-all. Scroll tracking, for instance, will only give you when someone hits the 90% milestone on your page, but if, for instance, you have a blog section, you will want to know more about 25, 50, 75 to see where exactly in the article you're starting to lose people, more information about different interaction points. Also, in a blog section, if you have a long comment section, someone may never reach 90% depth on the page, at which point all of your blog pages will look exactly the same and that they didn't interact. Similarly, outbound clicks are measured whether you're going to the same domain, but if you ran both www.abc.com and www.abcstore.com, and every click between those two sites would register as an outbound click, where you would probably want to kind of group those as navigation between your own sites, and outbound clicks purely to things you don't own. So while these events are nice, they are not the be-all and end-all. To refine that, we have to look at custom events. Everything that is not the page view and engagement events or those enhanced measurement events has to be added in as custom. This includes kind of navigation events, if you want to measure different ways that people click off of your homepage, either through a top navigation or links on actually in the content, interactions with your cookie consent banner, or something more important like add to carts and purchases. All those have to be set up to some degree in your tag management or coded in specifically. But then the question is asked, okay, how do we figure out what customer events we should track? How do we set those up? Where does all that naming convention and whatnot come from? And that is where we can help you. So the next step of this is many people on this call, there'll be some that maybe are looking just to move to GA4, but many people have a universal analytics or will have a different analytics platform that they already use and has lots of important information in there. How do we get from there over to GA4 without migrating any of the things that were broken or we didn't like? And this is where we have built out our process. So the first thing is we've got to do kind of the pre-work, the theory, as it were. We have to go through your site and your implementation and answer a lot of different questions. But broadly speaking, there's a few themes. First of all, who? This is going to cover the key stakeholders who use our data. That'll include yourselves, your core analytics team, but also like the marketing teams who want to know how well things are performing, the senior people who want to get a kind of quick overview of what's going on across the whole business, and then the site performance people who want to really narrow in on some key details. And also important to answer how we serve those different audiences. Are we looking to, everyone's going to get access to the interface, or are you looking to create a suite of reports for them? And then this blurs into the what question. These are our key and our niche needs, like what big key things we have to be able to track, like purchases, and niche parts like maybe specific errors that people are encountering. What kind of reports and what kind of regularity are those reports going to have to hit? And then an important thing to always ask when we're doing this what section is if there are any large site changes or new site sections that are going to be added in the near future. We want to make sure that we leave space in the way that we design our naming conventions and the events we build and so on, that it's easy to slot in something new, that the implementation is flexible, and that it isn't in 6 months' time going to look like 4 different implementations stitched together to try and cover all these new extra bits that are coming down the pipeline. Finally, an important question to ask is why? Over the sort of 10 years or so it's been around, Universal Analytics implementations have built up a lot of extra crust around the sides of events that once were useful and have stopped being, or used to track older parts of the site and don't anymore. This is both inside your Google Analytics itself, but also in your Google Tag Manager. Often people have a lot of extra tags that are no longer attached to a functioning data layer push, or no longer named correctly, or no longer referencing the right variables. It's important, I believe, to take this time where we have to do this upgrade to do a bit of a spring clean, to get rid of old, no longer useful piece of information, to carefully look at the things we are tracking and go, do we actually need this? Do we use this? Or indeed, we do need this, but is this done in a way that's actually best serving our needs? Or has more information been added that we want to capture? So, with those kind of theoretical themes in mind, let's look a little bit more about the actual specifics we want to look at. So there are 2 important places to look here. First of all is the site itself. We want to make sure that we know all the site sections that we have, be those as simple as homepage, product list pages, product pages, and the checkout pages, or if there's more complicated parts here, a place where you can sign up to different sorts of products, multiple different places you can pay for things, multiple different types of products entirely, or blog sections, things like that. And then for all those site sections, we want to know what the KPIs are, what the things we need to be able to identify and pull out to know that a session that interacted with that succeeded versus it didn't. The key ones include obvious things like, did we take money at this moment in time? But also potentially like registrations, either making a new account, signing up for a newsletter, or like loyalty programs, what have you. And then any other important form you may have, or indeed if you are not a e-commerce business, what the key request to quote, customer complaint, etc. forms are that you need to have to really understand how your site is performing. We also want to take this opportunity to make sure that we have an up-to-date understanding of all the other tools that you're using on your site. Your CRO tools, other experimentation tools, qualitative tools, marketing tools, etc. Because we want to make sure that as part of this process, every product link that we can physically set up is included. Part of the point of a Google Analytics is to sit in the middle and enrich all your other data sets by merit of having things in it that can be connected on that those tools cannot gather. And making sure that that's possible is a really important step here. And of course, speaking of marketing tools and setting up those interactions, we also want to make sure we take a moment to understand how the different marketing efforts are currently being tagged in the URLs and what have you, so that we can port that over into the new setup. Now, on the other side of things from how the actual digital ecosystem exists in its current moment, we also want to go and look at your old analytics platform itself. What custom fields and events are being tracked, of what is actively tracking, what is still working, and what is broken. If there are fields named thing X but doesn't pull in any data, or pulls in a list of IDs that don't make sense, we want to make sure we've noted that and that we're looking at ways to fix it. And we also want to see if there's any gaps that we can notice. If you've added a blog section that never got tracked, we need to make a note of that so we can start planning on how we're going to do that. And then the last but incredibly important step we want to make sure of at all points during this is, does all your universal analytics tracking comply with Google Terms of Service in the ways that what personal information you gather and whether things are correctly redacted, but also with other policies like GDPR, things properly gated behind cookie consent, etc. So, from all these discussions and audits and analyses, we should have a proper understanding of what tracking you have, what needs to be added, and how we're going to migrate it all. We will take this understanding and produce for you a measurement plan. Very simply put, this is going to be a list of all the events we're going to track, all the parameters we're going to gather alongside them, and when exactly we're going to fire them, along with any extra considerations we need to make. This document serves two purposes. First of all, during the implementation phase, it is a checklist for us to work through and make sure every single thing we want to do has been achieved. But also, it will form the basis of documentation that can be later handed out to users to say, this is what is in your platform, this is what it's named, what it's doing, and when it is actually being triggered on site, so that any user who joins, either moves the team, joins, or what have you, that wants to look at this data at a later date, will be able to very easily go in and go, right, I know exactly what this does and what this is for, and we take the guesswork out of using your analysis platform. So all of that is step two. And by the end of step two, as I say, we have a thorough plan of what your implementation will look like. Step three is building it. And there are two parts to this again. First of all is the part we have to do outside of the GA4 interface. This is sorting out what new things what new data layer pushes we need on site so that we can set up all the tracking, what may need to be modified to properly take advantage of GA4 features. And in that, we will write out developer guidance for your site developers to run through all the different pieces of script we might need added and make sure that any adjustments are done. And we'll run QA with them to make sure that we've got things triggering exactly the right times and places and pulling through as much information as we can get our hands on. After that, what we would do is we go into your tag management system, whether it be Google Tag Manager, Telium, what have you, and set up all the tags that are going to take advantage of this developer work. Properly going to read the information out of these new data layer pushes and push them into GA4 formatted in the correct way. This is also where we spend a lot of time making sure that consent settings are set up correctly, that data is only being captured at the appropriate times, and so on. Second half of this is actual work in the GA4 interface. With the change of the data model from UA to GA4, the steps you need to do to go from tracking is happening on site to we have reporting over here has been tweaked slightly. So we need to set up certain tracking parameters as custom definitions to make sure that we're pulling data through correctly and that it's available in all the different places you'll need it. We need to define our conversions, which is similar to the way that goals used to function in Universal Analytics. Obviously, we have to authorize any product links that you may have with other products in the GMP. And an important step, we need to make sure that we set up custom alerts and so on so that we have error detection built in Google from the jump. It's all well and good having data and being able to see when things go wrong or right, but we don't want the thing to happen where everyone is busy, no one looks at it for 2 days, you open it to find out your transactions have dropped to zero, and everyone panics, as that's been happening for a couple of days now. So by setting up a thorough system of alerts, we make sure that whenever something may go wrong in the future, we know about it the instant our analytics could possibly tell us about it. And that brings us to the end of this part of today. Hopefully this gives you kind of an overview of how to go from not having GA4 on your site at all to having a fully ready-to-use implementation that should cover all of your needs and the core Teams questions that you have. We'll now take some questions.